DW Africa Link.
Hello and welcome to this special podcast on the Ugandan elections, live from the streets of Kampala. I'm Isaac Mugabe, your host. On January 15th, Ugandans head to the polls in one of the most anticipated elections in the nation's history. The atmosphere right now in the streets of Kampala is charged with anticipation, not only from the capital, but also to the villages deep in the countryside. Millions of citizens are preparing to cast their ballots. However, the question on everyone's mind is, will Uganda continue under President Yoweri Museveni's leadership, or will a new generation take the reins? Uganda's political story has been shaped by President Museveni, who has been in power since 1986. Over the decades, he has overseen periods of stability, economic growth, and regional influence. Yet, his long tenure has also sparked debates about democracy, succession, and governance. Past elections have been marked by high voter turnout, though participation has declined in recent years. For example, in 2006, nearly 70% of registered voters cast their ballots. By 2021, turnout had fallen below 60%. Analysts say this reflects both voter fatigue and skepticism about the fairness of the process. This week's election is not just about who wins. It is about whether Ugandans believe their voices truly matter. We'll be hearing from the two main candidates, a political analyst and the Gen Z. But before that, here's a sneak peek into the candidates presented by DW's Frank Higa, also here in Kampala.
8 candidates are vying for the presidency. President Yoweri Museveni, representing the National Resistance Movement, is seeking a 7th term. His campaign emphasizes continuity, stability, and protecting Uganda's gains. Robert Kyagulanyi, better known as Bobi Wine, leads the National Unity Platform. He has energized Uganda's youth, promising democratic change and a break from the past. Mugisha Muntu of the Alliance for Transformation presents himself as a disciplined reformer, focused on building institutions. Nandala Mafabi of the Forum for Democratic Change highlights accountability and governance. Norbert Mao of the Democratic Party and Jimmy Akena of the Uganda People's Congress also bring long-standing party traditions into the race. Each candidate speaks to different constituencies, but all will share one stage this Thursday: the ballot box. Unemployment, especially among the youth, remains a pressing concern. Many young people say they want opportunities to build their futures at home rather than abroad. Corruption and governance are also central. Citizens question whether institutions are strong enough to guarantee fairness and accountability. Economic growth has been steady, but inflation and rising costs weigh heavily on households. And above all, the credibility of the electoral process itself is under scrutiny. Security forces are visible, opposition candidates face restrictions, and media access is uneven. For many voters, Thursday is about more than choosing a leader. It's about choosing whether they believe in the system itself.
Thank you so much, Frank Higa, for that brief. The Gen Z are the future, they say. They have key demands and concerns. Well, we are on the ground and we spoke to some on the streets of Kampala and in downtown. This is what they told Africa Link.
The use of tear gas should not be encouraged by any person, whether it being a leader or one of the candidates or not. Rather, maybe you can say people should be calm and you preach calmness amongst voters other than saying tear gas should be used. No.
I'm not scared. It is the usual business. We have to go and vote and we go back home. I'm going either to change or not to change.
Yeah, I am very ready for this election. My national ID is ready. I'm just waiting for 15th January to go and cast my vote. People are scared. They don't know what is going to partake on that day or the day after. I will understand if they don't turn out to vote, but I would really, really love everyone out there to come out and cast their vote.
We know what to do. I'll go vote, then go back home. Like the voice told us, it's important for security. I'm not scared, but I know there will be chaos. As usual, the habits of police, I know chaos will be there. I believe police has not done its work the way it's supposed to do because These are civilians you're dealing with, and brutality is not called for. Arrest and present someone into courts of law. So I think they have deviated a lot from the presidential message.
It's mixed feelings in here, excited and scared at the same time. I'm excited that we're going to see our next leader for the next 5 years, and of whom I don't know who that is going to be yet. But at the same time, I am scared, seeing a lot of police on the streets, a lot of the, authority, mostly the UPDF, the police on the streets. It is scary because sometimes I'm like, what is going to happen a day before or even a day after? So it's just a mixed feeling situation, scared, intimidated, excited. But all in all, I must say, all we can do your part and wait for what happens next. My main thing I would want my next president to do for us as Ugandans, as the young generation, is to eradicate or try to eradicate corruption, or do it completely if can.
Now, needless to say that among the candidates is musician turned politician Bobi Wine. When I spoke to him at his residence, he promised a new Uganda where citizens will be in charge of the country's affairs. He also spoke about his experience on the campaign trail. Sit back and take a listen.
It was a tough experience, a brutal experience. We had to contend. We were beaten to tear gas on a daily, pepper sprays, physical beatings, and some of our friends were killed for the campaign trail, shot by the military. But by the grace of God, we are here. We've been able to make it to the last kills of the campaign.
And how ready is the team on following the agents, monitoring the polls, because you have a slogan of trying to make sure that your vote, counts. And
absolutely, we have already deployed our colleagues to monitor, be following the elections. But as you must have heard, some of our colleagues are being arrested. Even our polling agents are in hiding, and yet they have to work. They have to perform their duty on Thursday. So this is supposed to be an election, but it's more less war. More than 750 of our colleagues are in prison already as we speak right now.
Yeah, bro. Yesterday was at your rally, and I spoke to some of your biggest fans from the ghetto, Kamota. Yeah. In fact, I have an appointment with them from here, and they have great hopes in you. What are the serious things that you really want to do for the MP and or in the KNC in general?
Now, saying 3 is really limiting it, but now that you said 3, I'll say, go ahead as well. First and foremost, we want to demystify power. We want to hand back power to the people. Right now, president is like a god, and this saying order from above, which must end, and that end to the new Uganda with an old Uganda. In the new Uganda, the people will be the true masters. We want to open up our economy to ensure that it is not closed. Most importantly, we want to free political prisoners and to unite our country, to bring everybody on board so we can plan as citizens of the country, regardless of political persuasion.
If I let you off the hook, you have a very busy day. I'm mindful of that. Yeah. I spoke to some voters who are undecided. They're going to vote for the first time, but they're undecided. Yes. If you were to speak to the nation right now, what would that message?
First of all, those that are undecided, I want them to vote for a vote. I want them to vote for the right to vote. To vote for the power of a vote, to ensure that their vote counts. Now a vote doesn't count because he was the gun controls it. We want to defeat the gun by vote. We want to defeat violence, non-violence. This vote is to assert ourselves as Ugandan and say, now we are taking back our country. For the first time, Ugandans should, and I believe are going to, elect one of them and put that person in the seat of the presidency. It is the first time. When I'm elected as president, I'll be the first democratically elected president of this country. We've never elected a president into office since independence 63 years ago. Now this is our opportunity to elect a president. Yeah.
And that one message that you should take the nation right now, what would that message be to the Ugandans?
This is not a mere election. This is re-owning our country. This is a vote for citizenship, to be citizens of Uganda without an expiry date. And citizens who matter. They should know that the countries that have developed, they don't develop because their leaders are so holy or their leaders are so good. No. Things are done right in these countries because their citizens are empowered and are going to take no nonsense from a leader. The citizens are the true masters. That is what we want to get in this vote. So when you're going out there to vote, you're voting for citizenship. You're voting for the right to be a Ugandan that lives in dignity. You're voting for the power of a vote. You are voting for a vote because right now you don't have a vote. It is Museveni that decides everything. But if we fire him, if we vote a leader, we will be getting a servant leader. So you're voting for servant leadership. You're voting for the rule of law. You're voting for democracy, for the restoration and assertion of democracy. You're voting for respect of human rights. You are voting for servant leadership.
And in a line or two, Thursday, after the vote, you're sure of victory?
Without a doubt, we are sure we are going to win this election. What we want the people of Uganda, that is a given. But what we want the people of Uganda to do is to make sure that when they win this election, when we win this election, it is respected.
However, reacting to Bobi Wine's allegations, President Museveni also threw back the accusation, saying the opposition members or groups are violent. They take orders from foreign, players who we don't know, and defended the use of tear gas that the police normally, unleashes against perceived troublemakers, or call them the opposition, if you will.
On the issue of law and order, you have been seeing the indiscipline and anarchic conduct of some of the opposition, guided by the wrong politics in their heads and prompted by parasitic foreigners that back them. The criminal opposition must also stop intimidating Ugandans. You have no right to intimidate a Ugandan. Therefore, Ugandans, come out and vote. Nobody would intimidate you or endanger your security. Anybody who tries will have himself to blame. The future of Uganda is bright. Using tear gas for rioters is both legal and non-lethal. Doesn't kill. It is much better than using live bullets. However, the police should be more methodical if they are to use tear gas or water cannons or other non-lethal techniques by, for instance, requesting in time the bystanders to move away for using tear gas and other anti-riot non-lethal methods against the rioters. The police should use loudspeakers to warn people and give people time to pull away.
Let me bring in now Professor Adolf Mbaine, a political analyst. Professor, thanks for joining me on this special podcast on the Uganda elections. To begin with, what is your overall assessment of the elections on Thursday, now that we are in the final stretch?
The environment, of course, is quite tense. President Museveni is in a strong position. He's the incumbent. He has a lot in his favor going into this election. But quite obviously, he's got a stiff challenge from the musician, Bobi Wine or Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, as is officially known. The president has been in power for quite long, 40 years. On January 26, a few days after the election, he'll be celebrating 40 years in power. And of course, there are people that are disenchanted or unhappy about his wrong rule. On the face of it, he has a strong party, the NRM, which straddles the breadth and width of the country. They have fielded candidates in every electoral area. Of course, the presidency, then parliament and local government positions that are electable. He has security by his side, the security organs. By his side, he's an incumbent. He controls the treasury. He has the resources. On the other hand, Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu is running. He has quite some good support in most parts of the country, especially the young people. And notably in the central and some eastern regions, he is quite popular especially among the youths who see him as a generational leader for them and somebody brave enough to challenge the president who has been in power for so many years. But the situation is quite tense. There are a lot of things that have happened. You have seen Robert Chagulanyi's campaigns and rallies intercepted by security organs. There has been violence in the elections. Some of his supporters have been arrested and detained, including even some of them who have stood in the elections. In fact, one of the most prominent ones being Alex Waiswa Mufumbiro, the party spokesperson who is standing in the Nakawa area here, fairly close to Kampala. He's been detained and denied bail by the courts. We have also seen a very different situation from the past where the Electoral Commission is denominating people they had approved, the commission had approved to stand in the elections, and most of them are from the opposition. The greater majority of them are from the opposition. People have even been questioning the impartiality of the courts of judicature in especially cases relating to that have been brought against members of the opposition around this election. And so that's where we are.
How do state institutions, like you mentioned, such as the Electoral Commission, the judiciary, and security forces, how are they likely going to affect the credibility of the whole process?
Yeah, that is a very good question, because those are very key institutions in ensuring that there is legitimacy of the election result. The thinking of most people on the street is that these institutions are not impartial. These institutions are not impartial. So and of course, you would probably understand this because, for example, the Electoral Commission is fairly exclusively appointed by the president. There is that what they call parliamentary approval, but over the years, I think Parliament has lost the ability to question presidential appointees. So they are approved as the president nominates them without any contest or question. The arbiter of an exercise as important as a national election is appointed without input from other key stakeholders.
Yeah. Let's take it down to the ordinary Ugandan. What do you think should be on the voter's mind when he goes to cast his vote or their vote on Thursday?
There has been low voter turnout progressively in the elections in the past. And my reckoning is that this election will even attract much, much fewer voters overall, because I think in many places I meet people that think that the election doesn't matter too much, especially at the presidential level, that whatever you do, maybe it will not change much. And that has also percolated into the lower levels of the election, when people feel that there are many discrepancies that are going to happen, and at the end of the day, the election is not going to reflect the true will of the people who vote.
Yes, we've been speaking to low-income earners. I can give you examples like the young men, who make a living out of making chapatis, or popularly known as Rolex by the roadside, and also border riders. And they told us something interesting. Like for the chapati sellers, they were like, we don't care whoever wins the election. What we want is improved conditions, improved economy. The costs are too high for them making the process they make. And also the border riders are saying the fuel costs are really, really too high. It's time that the authorities thought about it. And which brings me to wonder how economic conditions could influence political stability and voter priorities in this case.
some people have also been given money, I think, to buy borders and so on, and then pay back by some government agencies. Yeah, so all that put together, I think, would probably demonstrate that government cares about the economic well-being of the people, especially those who live on the edge, and that ultimately this should be able to vote for the president, partly in a reward for some of these interventions, but also because they want continuity, because there is a promise of more of these interventions to alleviate, the economic conditions of some of these people.
Maybe before we end our conversation, we saw what happened last year in Tanzania. And of course, this year, it's like a foregone conclusion for the incumbent, Yoweri Museveni. And then next year, we also have the Kenyan elections. I'm sure President William Ruto and Ally Museveni is watching closely. How could the election results affect regional stability of foreign relations, in this case of Uganda?
Yeah, I think that is a very important question, because the Tanzanian situation was very bad, and I think it was an eye-opener to people organizing elections subsequent to that particular election. My thinking is that Uganda won't go the same way as Tanzania. I think the dynamics are different. And President Museveni, I think, is quite on top of the security situation in the country here. So my gut feeling is that we won't go there. My own reading of the situation is that the president has enough support to secure victory. It may not be by a big margin, but at least the minimum he requires to win the election to be sworn in. And that given the advantage and resources he has, also secure a parliamentary majority that he requires, and majorities even in the other levels of electoral contests down below in the lower local governments. By and large, I think we expect that there will be some flashpoints during the election, which is expected. But by and large, my expectation, seated from where I am, is that President Museveni will win. Some of his key people will also win. There will be complaints and frustrations in various places, but I don't think this will amount to a very serious spiral into violence and confusion like we saw in Tanzania. I am optimistic that in spite of our challenges and the weaknesses and the impurities in some of our systems, I think by and large the election will pass and we'll get back to normal business in the fullness of time.
Many thanks for speaking to Africa Link. One can only hope that the exercise goes on smoothly. To sum it up, international observers are also on the ground, and they are watching closely to assess whether the process meets democratic standards. The outcome will shape Uganda's position in the region and influence how partners engage with Kampala in the years ahead. We would like to hear from you on our social media platforms like Facebook, Spotify, or wherever you listen to our podcast. This show was co-produced by Eddie Micah Jr. And I'm Isaac Mugabe, live in Kampala. Bye for now.